Welcome to the opening discussions of UNA.Talk.
Identifying with your emotions and physical states with Gatry, Alicia, and Ben.
Thank you for listening. How often do you feel sad or angry or happy or depressed? How often are you aware of your emotions or the physical states that you are in?
Are you being with those emotions? Are you feeling those emotions from different perspectives?
Are you honoring that aspect of yourself?
Do you experience pain? Do you have back pain or physical disabilities that you identify yourself with? Are you aware of the possibility that you are creating your identity with these impermanent states? How susceptible are you to getting stuck in emotional or physical states? How do you become aware of what emotional or physical states you are experiencing? What is the difference between I am happy and I feel happy?
Or I am happiness? What is the difference between feeling your emotions and being your emotions?
Identifying with emotions and physical states. What does that mean to you, Gatry?
Well, identifying with emotions and physical states, in terms of feeling and being, I believe that feeling an emotion is having a level of detachment and not allowing yourself to fully embody the emotion, and embodying the emotion or being the emotion. And to clarify, I am speaking in terms of allowing the emotion to be expressed in terms of I am anger or I am sadness, as opposed to I am angry or I am sad, because that is relinquishing yourself to the emotion versus creating a space within yourself, a container, if you will, for that emotion to be embodied, to be expressed, and be allowed to transmute, because that's what emotions are there for. They are there to awaken those pieces of yourself that are there to be loved, to be brought out and allowed a chance to be healed. To feel an emotion is to detach yourself from it, to look at it subjectively, and to kind of give it space, versus being an emotion is embodying it within yourself fully and allowing it to transmute faster by giving it the love that it's looking for to be healed.
Thank you.
Definitions of words are sometimes hard because, like, feeling something is like you get a sense of something, and then, like, embodying it and embracing it is different because you're like, you recognize it and you consciously like feel it, and you're, a lot of the time you don't consciously feel things, so sometimes you feel them consciously, sometimes unconsciously, they just happen or you actually recognize them. For me, it's a little bit of a struggle to go from feeling to being with those emotions. Sometimes it's a little bit of a disconnect between the two, and sometimes it's easier for me just to view the feelings rather than being the feelings. And I believe those are both valid, and they can also work together to transmute the emotion for your own growth and healing.
I resonate with what both of you said. I perceive feeling emotions and physical states as being a way to detach oneself a bit more from the situation and observe what is currently occurring. And I perceive being an emotion or physical state as embodying that feeling, really being with that feeling. So I am happy versus I feel happy. My back is painful versus my back is feeling pain. Similar to what you had said in an earlier conversation was how being an emotion or physical state, I am happy or my back is painful, is a way of being up close, up front, and surrounding yourself with that emotion or physical state and feeling, being the observer, detaching yourself from that emotion, saying, I feel something, implying that there is an impermanence where all feelings and emotions, physical states come and go, nothing is permanent, allows you to take a step back, be more of an observer, and look at things from a more outside perspective. So perhaps zooming in what the camera is being and zooming out would be feeling the emotion.
And for me, you can go back and forth between the two. You can start out being it.
Sure.
You can actually start out feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can go in between those two until you get through it. Those are both ways of comprehending and understanding and moving through things.
Absolutely.
You can go back and forth between feeling something and being something, and just going back and forth between those two until you can actually just transform it and transmute it into whatever you want it to be.
That's really awesome. In this conversation, I realized something that I had done with one of my biggest things that I'm currently working on a personal level is my fear of rejection, and how I am able to see it from an outside perspective, why I have a big fear of rejection, which impedes me from loving myself. How I was able to acknowledge and see it from an outside perspective, that I feel this way because of these particular events which have taken place in my childhood. But my largest obstacle was allowing myself to be embodied by that feeling, and allowing myself to have an emotional breakthrough and just crying to let all of that out, or experience the love and physical connection with other human beings. I kept myself away from a lot of that because I was constantly stuck in that observer state, saying, I know why I feel this way, because I'm stepping back away from the feeling. I'm saying I feel this way because of this, but I was not being that emotion to allow myself fully to express and let all of that, that water, all that build up inside myself break loose and flow out. And I feel like both are really important, because I feel like you can get stuck in either one. For example, like myself, I was constantly stuck being the observer. I was not allowing myself to embrace that emotion and break through it by letting it all come pouring out. And I could also see how you can be lost in the embodiment of an emotion, being an emotion, saying I am happy or I am depressed, and being stuck in that depression, not letting yourself be an observer, detach yourself, say I feel depressed, and then ask yourself why you feel that from an observer stance, separating yourself to then be able to transmute through that depression. You're constantly stuck in the emotion, and you never allow yourself the chance to come out and be an observer. So in both instances, you can be stuck, but allowing yourself to experience both allows you to transmute through those emotions and physical states which we experience on a regular basis.
And bringing it just to consciousness is a big part of it, because a lot of the times you feel these things and it causes bodily pain and problems and stuff that you don't even aren't aware of. But bringing it to your awareness is the first step.
So here's a great question. How does one become aware that they are stuck in an endless loop in either feeling or being an emotional or physical state? How does one break themselves out of that recurring circle so they can transmute through their current circumstance, rather than repeating the same issue over and over and never growing or evolving through it?
Are you asking how do you be conscious of it?
How do you become conscious of that? How do you become aware that you are stuck in this cycle? How do you wake up from that unconscious hamster wheel?
That's a good question.
I feel like two things which have worked really well for me in discovering this unconsciousness are containers and meditation. I feel that through meditation, it allows me to be in an observer where I am consciously bringing myself to the present moment, allowing my thoughts, my mind chatter to appear, for myself to be able to recognize that through practiced regular meditation, to constantly have those thoughts and emotions flowing through my mind and seeing them as they occur and embracing them as they occur from an outside perspective by meditation, and then creating a container with an individual or multiple individuals being vulnerable with each other allows more emotion to come through and that embodiment to arise. For example, I know when I was in summer camp, New Culture summer camp here in Mount Storm, that this container that we had created between a close group of people expressing our vulnerability and just opening up, being radically transparent and expressing ourselves without hesitation or limitation allowed me to really feel comfortable with the people I was with in order to break down and let those emotions come out finally. So to finally step away from my observer, my constant state of feeling things and separating myself and acknowledging what the problem was, but to actually be those emotions so I could release all of that and move on with my life. Those are two things that I noticed really worked well for me, was creating those containers with individuals which I can connect with on that level, and then also the meditation. It's like a cross balance of, one which allows me to embody and experience that emotion, the other which allows me to see it and observe it.
So, like interpersonal versus interpersonal.
Yes, exactly.
And you can also almost meditate on your emotions and being too. That's how I've had to deal with a lot of my own stuff, because I haven't had those interpersonal relationships that I've felt comfortable in, so I've had to sit with them myself. Now, I haven't transmuted all of, like, a lot of the emotion, but that's how I've had to, like, basically self-comfort and feel those emotions and release them through crying, through whatever it may be, just sitting with that emotion. Sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's depression, sometimes it's joy. It's just sitting with that. It could be something from the present or something from the past. And just sitting with that emotion can give you release.
See, for myself, it's difficult to discern on whether or not I understand the idea of being unconscious with an emotion, because often I check in with myself on a minute-to-minute basis, and if there's something that doesn't feel normal or within my equilibrium to me, I, through my practices, recognize that as being the next aspect of myself in line to be healed, to be transmuted. So if I'm dealing with something, to become aware of it is to step inside myself, again, whether it be through meditation or even just pontification, whether I'm like sitting out by the creek just having a thought, which to me is just as much as meditation as sitting in half lotus position with my mind open and my my fingers in Gyan Mudra. The point being is that I recognize that part of myself as being the next thing in line to be healed, this piece of me that isn't in harmony with my vibration. And by giving that version of myself love, it's just like it's released, it's just opened up, like this knot that is just melted away. And to me, that's the easiest way to recognize these physical states within myself. Like, it's funny because I actually for the longest time suffered from upper back pains to a chronic degree. And it was when I realized that it was coming from a place of not feeling emotionally supported, that it was by giving myself that emotional support, all of a sudden that back pain had disappeared like it was never there.
Wow. Got you. Would you be comfortable discussing how becoming aware of unconscious emotions or physical states relates to your experience on the campgrounds here at Abrams, how Michael and Warren, the people who generally organize and lead the campgrounds, how they had taken off and you were here by yourself with your brother, and how you felt initially, and then how perhaps those emotions or states have changed since you've left, and how that relates to becoming aware of unconscious emotions and physical states? Could you share that
Well,
experience?
being in the position that I was in, both the owner and the groundskeeper of the particular intentional community slash retreat center slash campground that I currently reside at, I was left in the dark. I wasn't given information on what exactly it was I was being asked to do or how I was supposed to get it done. Um, I was essentially left in charge of not only running the campground but fielding all of Michael's calls as well as facilitating acquisitions in terms of people showing up for reservations, people looking for motel rooms at the motel that we also own up the road. And I was very overwhelmed. I felt like I was cheated. I felt very frustrated. I was very in this feeling like I was being taken advantage of. But it was when I realized this that I looked within myself and realized that I was ignoring myself and not taking care of myself. And it was through that really I was taking advantage of myself. I was taking myself for granted, that I was supposed to do all of these things when really none of that was true. It was this imaginary game I was playing with myself. And it was when I realized that and I began to love myself and not just seek support from the people around me, but also accept support from the people around me. Because I've always had a tough time receiving love, to recognize when somebody is being affectionate with me. But it was through my self practice of learning how to love myself that it opened my perception up to receiving love from those around me. And it was coming to this conclusion that I was doing this to myself that gave me the courage to speak out to both members of this party, both Michael and Warren, and through so everything fell into place because they both immediately offered support and guidance in what it was I was doing and made my experience that much smoother.
Are you open to more questions?
Sure.
You mentioned how you assumed responsibility of all these tasks. You listed off answering phone calls, cleaning cabins, running the store, etc. A lot of different things. If there was a video camera that was filming the entire situation, what would the video camera have seen? Did Michael or Warren or did somebody else specifically ask you to make sure that all the cabins are clean, to do all of the bookings, to answer all of the phone calls? What would the camera have actually seen? What literally happened without any emotions or judgments or evaluations? Like, what actually happened?
The camera would have seen me making assumptions. The camera would have seen me, because of the programming that I am so conditioned by through society, I was under the assumption that because I was the only one here, it was automatically my responsibility to take on all of these different roles, to put all of this weight on my shoulders, when in all reality, none of it was actually asked of me. It was me assuming I'm the only one here, so that means I'm the only one who can clean these cabins. I'm the only one who can answer this phone. I'm the only one that can take reservations and check people in. I'm the only one that can answer phone calls about the motel and have people checked in and go out of my way to drive 3 miles up the road in the middle of the night to go check somebody in who just showed up out of the blue. And none of it was actually put upon me, but rather I had assumed it was my responsibility because of all of these preconditionings.
Can you share one more time how you became aware of those unconscious actions that were taking place due to the unconscious experiencing of emotions?
I recognized that it was all an imaginary game within my own head. That
How did you do that? How did you recognize that?
See, that's where it gets difficult for me because it was an epiphany state. It just clicked. All of a sudden, I realized that it was never actually expressed to me that these tasks specifically were expected of me, and it was in that moment that things began to become clear.
Were there times where you were so embodied in an emotion or physical state after so much had taken place that perhaps you had sat down, you really embodied yourself in what you were feeling, and then through deciding, now I feel this way, stepping back and putting yourself in observer state, you realized what was happening?
I would say that the best example of that was when a few days ago, I was so overwhelmed with everything that was going on that I was so stressed out, I felt like I wanted to pull my hair out. And it was recognizing that frustration and without necessarily like reciting the serenity prayer within my own head, just understanding that I can't change the things that I cannot change. And by accepting that which was rather than trying to change it around me, the the feelings began to quell within me, to fall into place, which brought me that expanded state of clarity to see the forest through the trees, if you will, to pull away. So yes, I would say it was in that moment that I stepped out of the embodiment and into the feeling of,
That's wonderful.
which allowed me to then look at it from a detached perspective and understand that what I was doing was self-sabotage. I was doing this to myself.
That's awesome. You came in, you zoomed in, you came out, and then, yeah, that's so great. That's awesome. That's great. Thanks for sharing.
For sure.
That's great.
That's what that felt like. It was like that moment felt so complete that I was just like,
For sure. For sure. I thought that was a great opportunity. It just came to mind. And also, it didn't occur to me before how, a lot of my own experiences that I had to constantly, I was lost in embodiment. I was lost often in embodiment as a young person, as a child, growing up in a difficult situation, multiple difficult situations, experiencing difficult situations as a child. I often found myself lost in being the emotion or physical state. I was constantly, feeling sad, depressed, or angry, and it wasn't until starting to run away from home, spending time up in the mountains, running or riding my bike, or finding places of tranquility where I was by myself, that allowed me to ask myself why I was feeling the way I was feeling after feeling it for so much time, that I put myself into this observer state. And I got to that capability at such a young age. It's been wonderful. It's helped me grow and be aware of a lot of things in an observer state for a very long time. But it's only now, 15, 20 years later, where I'm beginning to realize how important to be able to come into the embodiment, into being sad, being depressed, being angry, rather than just feeling those emotions, detaching myself and being an observer. They're both, feeling and being an emotion or physical state are both so incredibly important, but it's so incredibly easy to get lost in one or the other.
I feel like the stuckness that people experience when having emotions comes from the false pretense that emotions are there to be changed, when in all reality, emotions are there to be felt. They are there to enrich your experience through these things that you are feeling, because they allow you to have the thoughts necessary for transmuting the actions that caused the emotion to occur in the first place.
Absolutely. And I think another difficulty that most people run into is getting trapped in one of those, either being the emotion or physical state or feeling the emotion or physical state, and not being able to complete that experience and transmute through it. Experience it, go through with it, and move on with your life. To not let it continue being a recurring issue with whatever it might be, childhood traumas or different things.
Yeah, I can resonate with your being stuck in the emotions. I did that a lot as a child because I didn't know how to communicate or how to step back from the emotion and recognize it and understand it. So I was stuck in the emotion a lot of the time, and I didn't know how to get through it. So I would usually have animals around that would help me to at least comfort me in that situation. So yeah, I can resonate with that part definitely. And now it's at the point where I feel a lot more than I do actually being, and there's a lot of locked up emotions within myself, and a lot of things that are just kept in little boxes with little keys, and it's opening those and feeling them and being with them that will be interesting, that I'm trying to work towards. And also just feeling comfortable enough within myself and around other people around me to express those. You have been listening to Identifying with Your Emotions and Physical States with Gatry, Alicia, and Ben.
Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for being yourself.
We definitely got that.
Woohoo!
That was great. This is too cool.
You can edit this, right?
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Next time on Dragon Ball Z!
Bitches!
¡Órale, vato! ¡Chinga tu madre!
Yo, I'd like to give a shout out to my homies on the West Coast!
Speaking of which, I gotta give a shout out to the sidewalks for keeping me off the streets! And how about them whiteboards? They're remarkable!
So tough.
Can I get an amen?
Hey, that's sexist.
Can I get an A-woman? A-woman!
I got to sneeze. Totally putting that in at the end.